Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. I am super pumped to help you and myself to find amazing real estate deals. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm bringing on a fantastic expert who has a terrific system, software, how to get lists and leads and how to find them, but at the same time, reaching out to the people. And they have so much great content for us as real estate investors to find great deals. Super pumped to bring on Burton Alicondo on the show from Propstream. Hey, Burton, thank you so much for being here.
What's going on, Dustin? Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, happy to share what I know about, data, and hopefully it leads to, whoever's listening, their next deal, their next problem to be solved. There's tons of homeowners that need help out there. So hopefully I can help today.
Yeah, the main thing that most people do is they go to like realtor.com or they even
Mm.
call up a realtor and say, "Hey, realtor, you start sending me deals." Well, then you get locked in, and it's never fun being locked into a realtor that is saying you can only buy properties through me. But I
Mm.
digress a little bit. Love-hate relationship with realtors. But with that, there are great ways to get deals that are off market, even on market deals, pre foreclosures. And I know PropStream does that. But one thing that I want everybody to realize is because people are asking me, "Hey, Dustin, right now interest rates are high, prices are high. This is a bad time, isn't it? A bad time to invest in real estate." And I tell them there's never a bad time to invest in real estate. But the best time was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. The only thing there are is bad deals. We never buy bad
Mm.
deals. Even in the best time, when it's the lowest interest rates, lowest prices, and everything, you could still buy bad deals. So we stay away from those bad deals. We buy the good deals. So Burton, you're going to help us to use PropStream to find amazing deals. So let's get started. So let's say, let's pick an area. Let me
Yeah.
ask you. You're the expert. Are there any good areas for buy and hold? It could be short term, mid term, long term, but we love buy and hold, not necessarily flipping or wholesaling, which we can get into that. But any areas that you're seeing right now that has good cash flow, long term properties, meaning buy and hold. It could be mid term or short term. But your thoughts on areas?
Well, I think every market is designed in a unique way where like no matter what market you're in, there are going to be the markets that where most of the money is flowing. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let me just show you exactly what I
Please.
mean. So, there's this thing I teach. I call it following the money. And so, for example, Dustin, give me a city really quick, just random city in the United States because we are nationwide, but give me a city and I'll show you how we can follow the money in that
Oh, this
city.
sounds great. Let's say we've been investing in the Midwest.
Okay.
Let's do Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham. So Birmingham, Alabama. So we go to Birmingham, Alabama. And again, I'm from Southern California, so what do I know about this market? It's the first time I'm actually looking at the data in this market in a sense. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be following the buyers that are already there. They've done the research. They're the ones investing before I'm doing. So there's nothing really to do anything different. It's just what's their behavior. So we have a filtering menu, and here at the top is our filtering menu. If you click on it, it'll expand and show you all of our lead lists and the 165 plus filters that you're going to have the ability to manipulate and either create a buyer's list like I'm about to do right now, or an off market or an on market list, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in just a few moments. But this is where I would start. If you're new to your market, new to the industry, or you're just going into a different city you're not familiar with, the first thing I would do is pull up that city and then go after the cash transactions. But
So
I need you
when
to
you say
narrow it
crash
down.
check, these are ones that have already closed in a
Correct.
cash. Got it.
They not only have they closed in a cash transaction, we did you the additional favor of extracting all the owner occupied cash transactions. So this only represents non-owner closed cash transactions. So non-owner occupied closed transactions. But there's still some noise in this, and the two noises I'm referring to is the we need to reduce the recording date because I don't know if this person from 2019 or even 2016 is still buying today. And same with the property type. PropStream has so much data from vacant land to commercial buildings to condominiums to mobile homes that we want to make sure we're reducing that noise and only going after the buyers that we need, right? So, for example, if I specialize in single family rentals because that's what I want to go after to then put in my rental portfolio, then show me where all the cash buyers are at that are buying residential single family properties. I can get a little bit more granular as we have more property details. But let's also reduce the transaction noise. And that's we only want to find recent transactions. So in our owner information and occupancy filters, there's a sell date filter here. And so what I can do is say this, show me all the cash transactions that were only residential single family properties in the last year. So let's go back to January of 2024 and starting the first. So now we've reduced not just the property type, but all the old transactions are now out of the picture. So we're only again going after cash transactions, single residential family.
And a special thanks to Propstream for jumping on and walking us through how to find these great deals. You can get a discount from Propstream and get a 7-day free trial if you go to masterpassiveincome.com/Propstream. The link will be in the description, so definitely check it out there. Get the discount. You also even, I think sometimes they even give away $50 extra in your account so that you can even start doing direct mail or doing skip tracing and all that sort of stuff. But you definitely want to use Propstream, get that discount, get the trial and everything. Go to masterpassiveincome.com/Propstream.
Say, okay, well, I don't need a buyer. I want to know where the most distressed markets are in this area because this is probably where I'm going to find the most leads in. You could do the exact same thing I just showed you, but instead of choosing a category where it's a buyer, how about a category where it's a distressed homeowner? So in this sense, instead of looking at all the cash buyers in this area, show me all the tax delinquent properties in Birmingham, Alabama that are the same scenario, residential single family property, maybe owned by an individual, not a corporation who just forgot to pay their taxes because they're so busy. So show me all the tax delinquent residential single family properties that are owned by an individual, maybe for a few years or so, like 5 or more. And then once you have those results, you can then use this little button right here. This is the button I was going to click on before I refresh. And this button, what it does is it gives you our spreadsheet view. So let's kind of just follow the flow here. I'm not from Birmingham, but now I know which zip code has the most financial challenges out of all the zip codes in Birmingham. And how did I do that? Easy. I just pulled a distress category, tax delinquency, and broke it down by zip code. And as you can see here, in the last out of all of our tax delinquent records, there's only been one distressed property owner in that zip code compared to 35242. 35242 actually has 9 of them. And then if we look at 35214, we can see 35214 literally completes the entire page and it boils over to the next page. So let me ask you this, guys that are watching this sitting. If I gave you $1,000 and said, hey, you have $1,000 for marketing, where are you going to put most of your marketing budget into? Which zip code? And that's all I'm trying to just prove a point is that
35214, yeah.
exactly. So now knowing that, knowing out of all the tax delinquents, 35214 is the most distressed zip code, then that's the market I'm just going to focus all of my efforts in. Find me all the tired landlords here, find me all the pre-foreclosures, all the deceased owners, all the pre-probates, the vacants, failed listings, which are practically all the categories I'm naming off. Um, so that's how I would essentially use data to find a hot market, either follow the buyers or follow the distressed records. They're already there and just really break it down. And then those are your targeted markets.
Love it. I want to jump in. There's a couple things that I want for us to go through. Subject to, that is a fantastic
Mhm.
way to buy properties. How do we use PropStream to find subject to deals? Let's say Birmingham or a different city, it doesn't matter. But yeah, how do we do that?
Yeah, so the easiest thing you probably want to narrow down, obviously, when doing a subject to, one of the most important aspects is there a note on the property? And thankfully, we have mortgage filters. So at the very bottom of our lead list filtering menu here is our mortgage section. And so if we are trying to go after a subject to, some things I would note would be, is it an assumable loan? And cool thing is we have loan type features. So you can go in here and say, I need all the conventionals, FHA, VA loans. And obviously, an interest rate plays a vital role in doing a subject to or buying notes or other creative seller finding strategies, if you will. So in this case, maybe I want something that's no more than 4% of an interest rate. So at minimum, I would start here. Let's make sure there's a note on the property that's assumable with a low interest rate. Maybe to help us out even more, we can even narrow it down so that it's a fixed rate. Why? Because we don't need it to make any adjustments on us
How do
along
you
the way,
know
right?
what the rate is and if it's fixed or not?
That's essentially our goal as a company. Our goal is to get the data providers out there collecting the data. We go buy it, which is very, very expensive. We make sure we audit it, clean it up, and then we put it in here. Now, in terms of the rate, so no one really knows what the rate is. It's only between owner and the bank, but there are some indexes out there that we can cross-reference the data. So what we're able to do is take the recording date, the loan type, cross-reference it with that index, and get you an assumption on where that rate could be at
Totally
that
makes sense.
time. Now, again, to your point, Dustin, it could be off by a point, could be off by zero point 0.5. There is some discrepancy in there, but our goal is to constantly, implement logic or look for that, more aggressive provider and go from
And it's
there.
and it's easy to see. I mean, somebody could pay down their rate and all that sort of stuff, but if you just said they bought it this date, what were the mortgage rates on, average back then? That's another good way to figure out if, hey, it's
That's
not like
exactly
20%.
the
Yeah.
process. Exactly. So you have loan types, interest rates, interest rate types, and then what I would do on top of not only making sure there's, your mortgage in play, but then again, back to the original process, I would also narrow down what type of property you're trying to go after, because again, we could have a mortgage on a commercial building, a mortgage on a vacant plot of land. So I always encourage make sure you're specific on your property details. That's going to save you marketing money at the end of the day. And then last but not least, you can either stop there or we can go in our lead list and just add that motivation on top of it. So for example, a very popular category for subject to is failed listings. You try to sell it at full price, that didn't work out, but because you have a 4% assumable loan, have you heard of this strategy called subject to? So here's a list I would say is very, very common in the subject to world in terms of going after some motivated, and I
Well,
use the
they
air
couldn't
quotes
sell
on
it,
there.
in the regular market, and so maybe they might be motivated to
Yeah,
sell it in creative ways.
yeah, and absolutely. And I have users that are like, well, I don't want them to fail. What if they're on the market now? Again, guys, we have an on-market option here, so you can even do on-market if you're looking for on-market. We have no discrepancy whether you want on, off-market, you do. If you are going to look at on-market, one popular filter that I see people use with on-market is the days on-market filter. So in this case, I'm not just looking for anybody on market. I'm looking for someone who's been on market for maybe 5 months or more with an assumable loan at 4%. So now is the time to start planting that seed because maybe in the next 30 days, 60 days, when it fails, they already know who I am, right? So again, on market, off market, there's so many different strategies, but at minimum for subject to, I would make sure that you start with the mortgage, make sure it's assumable, have the rates that you need, and then property details, and then any motivated factor on top of that.
Terrific. Next, that comes brings me to the idea of foreclosed listings. I know back in 2009 and 10, foreclosures were ever pre-foreclosures and all that sort of stuff. So how can we use PropStream to find foreclosed listings or pre-foreclosed listing and buy them to put them in our portfolio?
Absolutely. So lead lists, we have a category there for you. And so in our lead list section, there are three categories that will be best suited for this audience. And I don't know your market or your states and the policies, but those three categories are pre-foreclosures, and then we have auctions. And if you're wondering the difference, they're both pre-foreclosures. Pre-foreclosures, actually, let me just kind of explain this here in our pre-foreclosure section, we give you access to all the different options. So we have notices of defaults and les pendants, which are pre-foreclosures, but the key here is they don't have an auction date assigned to it yet, right? So we got the document, but the court or the courthouse hasn't decided, or clerk's office hasn't decided, the county hasn't decided a date yet. When they do decide on a date, then it goes into the next category called notice of trustee sale, and those are your auctions. So these two are both pre-foreclosures. The difference is one has an auction date, one does not. A third category, fourth category, one that not too many people are very familiar with is default releases. This market doesn't have it, but we can at times show you oh, actually, was that it right there? Hold on one second. No, this market doesn't have it. So at times we can show you when pre-foreclosures have been released, assuming the owner has paid. We do have investors that go after default releases only because history has a tendency of repeating itself. And then to your point, the last and final category is our bank own and aka your foreclosures. So bank owned records are also available in PropStream. So you have your pre-foreclosures, your auctions, default releases, and your bank owned category.
That's terrific. And the next thought that comes to mind, because we have foreclosures, we have subject to, but if we are just saying in my city, I want to find any off-market deal because off-market
Mhm.
deals are really good if you can get them because hopefully you're going to be getting a lot of equity when you're buying the property. How do we find off-market deals or what's the best strategy to use PropStream to find off-market deals?
Okay, well, this is a really good question. Kind of a loaded one, but I have some best practices that can help you with that. And so let me pull up this quick PowerPoint here I had prepped. If you were to ask me that question, I would say, well, there's two ways to approach this. One is the traditional method. And what I mean by that is it all starts with a list, right? It's just like in the past before software, before PropStream, we would go to the county, we would grab that pre-foreclosure list, grab that high equity list, whatever list they had to provide. And then that's what we would work off once we got back to the office. Now, once we did get back in the office, some of the key things that we would look for is it off market, right? Thankfully, that's a filter that we have. And then you also mentioned, is there equity on the property? Now, equity, I leave it up to the user because I don't know what you know, right? If you know subject to, you probably don't need equity. If you do short sales, don't need equity. But if you're a fix and flipper, a wholesaler, you're gonna need equity, right? So equity is important. We notice that that becomes a popular filter. And then the property and owner type is last because again, with so much data that PropStream houses, if you don't tell us the type of property, you might end up marketing to a church or a school. If you don't need that, save yourself the marketing money, narrow it down. Same with the owner characteristics. We have LLCs, we have trusts, we have individual owners. So let us know what you need. So if you were to have that traditional mindset approach, then your search would look like this. You go to Birmingham, Alabama, and then you would go after a category, for example, maybe a tired landlord. 15 years, non-owner occupied is what this category represents. But again, that's just the list. So that's step one. Step two is we got to now decide whether on or off market. So MLS section here, that's the first filter. Do you want it on market? Yes. Or in this case, no, I don't want it on market. And to do you a favor, those that are listening, we added an additional status called never listed because it could be off market today, but it could have been listed last week and the owner still wants the price that it failed at. And I don't want to deal with that. So how about we look for tired landlords that are off market but have never been listed? So I don't have to worry about someone who's talked to an agent. See, we think really in depth with that, but that's still step two, off market, just with a little cherry on top. Step three is equity. I don't know what you know, but let's say I'm a fix and flipper right now. I need equity. And so estimated equity percentage is a filter of ours, and we can put negative numbers, we could put 10%, or in this case, if I'm a wholesaler, 60% or more, the higher the better. And last but certainly not least, step four, we got to now narrow down the noise, and that's the property details and the owner information. So when it comes to property details, I don't want it all. I don't want commercial. I don't want vacant land. I just want residential single family properties because I'm going to put them in my rental portfolio eventually. And then last but not least, the whole reason I'm building this list is because I'm going to market to it and have someone call me back. So I get to control who calls me back. And how do I do that? Just by telling PropStream what type of owner I want to market to. So PropStream, just show me the individual owners. So when I send this list of 7,900 properties a postcard, then 7,900 individuals read that postcard and hopefully half of them call me back. And these are individuals, not LLCs. And I don't need to worry about setting up a schedule and talking to the owner of the owner of the owner. No. So the four steps when you're building your first list with PropStream, or if you've already done this, again, that's a traditional search. Pick a list, make sure it's off market, has the equity you need, the property and owner type. Anything after this is what we would call list stacking. And some of you are like, well, I want it to also have a lien on the property. Okay, good. Go to the lien section, include that. Now we're down to 68, but that's your preference. So lists, off-market, equity, property and owner type, start there. Anything else, we'll leave that up to you. But as long as you follow those four traditional steps, you're on the right track to building your first list. Then you can save it, export it, or take advantage of some of our other features like skip tracing to get a phone number or an email, as well as our campaign section, which is we can set you up with a website for your list, send those postcards for you, as well as emails for you if you want as well.
That's
But
super
that's the
awesome. Makes
first
it so much
that's the
easier.
first way I would build a list. The second way is a new way that I think could be a little complex for those that are listening, but I
Well,
don't
let's
mind
try it. Okay,
sharing.
so the first way is the traditional way. Just get a big list, filter it down as best as you can that fits your criteria, and then you direct mail, you phone call them, do the robo dial and texting and all that sort of stuff, which is a fine way to go. But you also have a different way that's outside the traditional
Yeah.
way.
And I think this way is new, and that's why I said it's kind of it might throw you
Does it
off
have
guard, those
AI
that are listening,
involved?
watching. No, it actually doesn't. This because well, unless you consider yourself the human brain in AI, which I think is far
Perfect.
superior. But this situation I call this method building situations, and you kind of nailed it a little bit earlier when you mentioned interest rates, and I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. But if you're going to be building situations, your own situations and Propstream, which I encourage you to practice, there are some few steps that you still need to follow, and here are those steps. Okay, obviously make sure it's off market. Still apply the equity you need so you can perform your exit strategy subject to wholesaling, fixing and flipping, whatever it is. And you still need to apply your property and owner characteristics. Thankfully, I've already done all of that, so I don't really need to reapply that. The only thing I'm going to do right now is remove the list that I selected initially. Okay, so everything has been reduced. Let's also remove the lien. So, all right. All right. So halfway reset. I the filters remaining are the following: off market, the equity I need, the property and owner characteristic. But this is where again I want people to start really like paying attention to. I have a firm belief a lead is not always going to be on a list. And Dustin mentioned it earlier, right? One of the common things I kept hearing over the last 24 months is nobody wants to sell their house because their rates are so low. When the federal rates are at 6%, who wants to sell their house at 2%? I totally agree with you. If I had a 2% mortgage right now, why would I lock in something for 30 years at 6%? Are you insane? If you're marketing to me, I'm going to rip up that postcard or I'm going to mock you on the phone. But there's always two sides to the fence. So while you're complaining about the 2 or 3% or trying to market to the 3 2, you know what I would have done with PropStream? I would have said, hey, that interest rate filter, wait up here. If the federal rates are at 6%, there must be owners at 8% or higher out there. Those are my leads. Hello, Mr. Homeowner. Are you aware that federal rates are at 6%? I noticed that you're at 8%. I could save you a few dollars here or there. Or maybe it's time to sell and lock something at 2% lower. So the 2, 3% owner hates the 6%, but that 8, 9, 10, 11% homeowner, they love the 6%. And you know why? They're not you. They're not real estate professionals that are always paying attention to what the federal rates are at. It's your job to educate these homeowners who are working two jobs that don't realize they could save a few $100s here or there, or sell, take advantage of that equity that we just looked for, and buy their house that they've always been working hard for.
I think it's
That's what I mean by
fantastic. Yeah,
building
you're 100% right.
situations.
Yeah, us as real estate investors, we see that interest rate. In fact, I bought an Airbnb in Tennessee in May of 2024, 8% because it was just the top. It just happened. We were buying it and just happened to be at, but I was really excited. Just a month ago, I refinanced it at a 4.5% 15-year note. It just, the rates dropped all out. But anyways, no matter where you think the rates are, somebody's situation is going to be different than maybe they might like the 2%, or maybe they have an 8%. They got to get out of it. So I think those are.
Absolutely. Here's another one that's near and dear to me because this is the reason my father sold our house, but it had nothing to do with the interest rate. It's the property itself. People forget living in the house becomes a situation. And here's one I can create that if you're a fix and flipper listening, you should definitely go after these. But owner occupied, individually owned properties, 10 years minimum. And the reason they would like to sell, same reason my dad sold the property. 3 bedrooms or more, that indicates a family living in it. But the reason my dad sold the property is because we were tired of sharing one bathroom for 10 years. So if I'm a fix and flipper, show me everyone in Birmingham that's sharing one bathroom for the last 10 years with their family. And just so if I do acquire it, there's some profit to be made. Let's make sure that property has 1,100 square footage minimum. Why? Because when I do acquire that single family property with one bathroom and it has 1,100 square footage, well, what do you think it's the first thing I'm going to put into it? bathroom, right? So my typing is too quick here, but there we go. So 1100 square footage. You know what? My typing is way too quick, but you get the idea.
I
I'm
do.
able to create this scenario. And that's what I mean. I'm not going after a list because how many people are going after pre-foreclosures? And I'm not saying you shouldn't go after it. You should go after it, but you shouldn't stop after doing that. You should be looking at these filters in a way where, hey, rather than going after the same list everyone's probably going after, what scenarios can I create? And I just gave you two, high interest rates. And in this case, I'm showing you the 530 families that are sharing one bathroom with their family for the last 10 years. How many of them want to tap into that equity and finally buy one of your three bedroom, two bathroom listings that you have? So that's all I'm
Brilliant.
saying. Like you have to start thinking of situations because no one just wakes up overnight and they're on a list. You can find those situations way before they show up in any of these categories. So
That's
thanks for letting me
fantastic.
share that with you, Dustin. I appreciate that, man.
No, I'm really excited about that because that's really good insight, especially like a 3-1. A 3-1, people are like, yeah, it's time to move out. And I love buying 3-1s, putting extra bathroom units. It's a 3-2 now, but even a 3-1 as a rental is not bad. A 3-2 as a rental is great, but they're trying to move out and move out. Okay. So how can we use PropStream to find not off market, let me say that. How I want to find fix and flip properties. So how can we use PropStream to find fix and flip or even wholesale properties? Because, we got to capture equity. We can't just, get it with really, really like no equity at all, but we have to be able to capture with equity.
Yeah, and that's right in the filter. The most important part is just making sure that you apply that minimum in equity. If you're a fix and flipper, again, some categories that I would consider using is not just the estimated equity, but you don't really want to find something, especially if you're a fix and flipper. Like one filter I would also consider in your search is just the year built filter, right? In this scenario, I'm not looking for something that was built last year. What am I going to fix and flip? The washer and dryer that's been there for a year? Like you probably want to narrow it down. So in this case, maybe look for a single family property. It's been owned for 10 plus years, and it's been, no year built 2000 or earlier. That way, we at least know there's 20 years of ownership or of building wear, I should say, on that. And this could also apply to if you're a contractor. Maybe you do roofing, right? Not only are you an investor, but you have roofing on the side. Then find the properties that are 25, 30 years old. And those are the homeowners you should not only try to see if they want to sell, but if they don't want to sell, hey, I noticed your roof could use some work as well, right? Now you can pivot to your next business. So to your point, Dustin, we have so many filters. It really boils down to what is your exit strategy? And that's really the point I'm trying to make at the end of the day is that um, everyone's different. And we don't gear this product to an agent, to a lender, to a contractor. But the funny part is anybody can use it. It's just what's my exit strategy? And all I got to do is apply those filters. But if I was like a fix and flipper, one of the data sets I would use right now that's currently new and hot is our Propstream intelligence filter. One of the things that we've done is we've used AI data to analyze property photos that are on market. So when a property hits the MLS, we'll analyze those photos and then you can filter based on the grade. So in this case, show me all the properties in less or poor condition. It's going to go through those property photos. And as you can see here, here's a property in Birmingham, Alabama. And our AI went through these photos, and that property definitely needs a facelift.
So this
So
is
we are
like
starting.
AI doing driving for dollars for you.
But it's using the MLS photos,
That's
correct.
awesome.
So as we get millions of photos, in this case, I didn't have to go through 11 photos. All I said is, PropStream, you've already done that for me. So do me a favor, find the disrepaired ones and then go from there. But to your point earlier, you mentioned subject to. Here's another way I can use it, not just in disrepair, but what's a common thing that people have to worry about when they're doing subject to is the condition of the property as well, right? So in this case, if I don't want to renovate a property, but I still want to subject to it, how about we do it the opposite way? Show me everything in good condition or better that has an assumable loan and is at 4% or under. You see how this could work now? So the Propstream Intelligence was introduced in November. What that's doing is analyzing photos and then giving it a grade. And then you guys can either look for the poor graded condition properties, or in this case, the great looking condition properties with the 4% mortgage. So that way you can subject to it without renovations being involved.
That's fantastic. Okay, so if I am a buy and hold where I could do short term, midterm, or long term, if you were to
Mhm.
start from scratch in a new city, in fact, let me give you one that I was actually, actually trying to find in. So in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, I was like, you know what? I'd love to get a midterm property in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. So help me find in Mount Juliet.
Am I
It's
spelling it right?
probably
And is it
Is it
MT?
J-U, Juliet? Yep, J-U-I. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So same thing here.
I want to find a buy and hold property that
Mhm.
in this area. It doesn't have to be in the city of Mount Juliet, but around it. Short term's a bit negative because Nashville is cracking down on it, but midterm's fantastic. Help me to find a midterm property here.
Yeah, so here I would probably just look for all the non-owner occupied properties. Start there, right? Because again, it's a matter of do we want to talk to the owner who's living in the property or talk to a property that they're not living in and see if they don't want to liquidate that or, let it go. So the first thing I would probably do is start with non-owner occupied properties. Or again, we have a category for it. So go straight into our lead list and tired landlords is your category. So these are properties that are already being rented out and they've been rented out for 15 years. So two things I think is important. You're going to deal with the homeowner who's been dealing with the rental property and all the headaches over the last 15 years with that, right? But these properties are already in a renter environment. That's the notion behind the data as well, right? So we can buy a property in a market, but most of these tired landlord properties, if I were to go after it, like this Curd Road here, not only has it been owned for 27 years by a person, maybe this person finally wants to let it go. But this property, because it's a rental property, I can look at the demographics and we can see that the renter environment is going away. So this might be a reason that he doesn't want to even do this anymore, is because this is now an environment that's not cash flowing. So to me, it's we can use the tired landlord data to find sellers, but then you have Propstream's demographics to confirm whether it's a true asset that you should go after. So what are the two steps here? Use the tired landlords, go after those homeowners. That's going to be a good rental portfolio since it's non-owner occupied already. You don't have to worry about the owner having memories or any attachment issues. And then the second thing is once you identify that address, you have the luxury of going into demographics and confirming whether the environment is still strong with renters or if it's an asset you need to move away from. And so
So
to your
let me
point,
ask that real
that
quick. So I'm going to drill that down because if there's less of renters, there's more homeowners. You're thinking that it's because the price to rent is not good enough.
it's either not good enough, or in this case, it's probably because this is an environment where more people want to move and live in versus move and rent, right? And then that's also very important to know the demographics. Like, for example, this property has a higher owner demographics, and right now it's currently off market. It was just on market for 63 days and it just sold. But there's a reason why they put all the money into rent it. This is not a rental property. This is an environment where people want to move in. So we're going to stage this property and put the highest material possible, right? Without breaking the bank. But the idea is top ARV because this is a fix and flipper environment. But if this was the opposite, to your point, Dustin, if I went into demographics and I noticed, hey, there's 80% renters in this market, I don't think I would have renovated the property this way. Because why? Why am I going to put $70,000 into renovations for a tenant to destroy it in 1 year? You see, that to me is important to know. Acquiring the asset is one stage of the process. Knowing the demographics and what to do with that asset, the exit strategy is also equally important. And I think the demographics can tell you whether that asset is a rental asset or not a rental asset.
This is terrific. Now, can you help me in the same area find a property just because this one looks like it's a flipped property? Help me
Yeah,
find one that I can flip myself. Is that with the
yeah.
AI intelligence or how would you do that?
Yeah, you could definitely do the AI, and if data is limited in the area, because let's say you're in a remote area, and I'm not sure if Mount Juliet is that, but the first thing I would start with is just let's make sure it's off market. So on market, no. Who do you want to speak to? I probably want to try to negotiate with an individual, so owner type individual. Again, do you want any emotional attachments? Yes or no? For me, probably not. So owner occupied, I prefer no. So off market individually owned, not owner occupied. Maybe, you've had this house for 5 years. I don't like looking for recently owned houses. That's why I always put 5 years minimum. That lets me know, hey, you've tried to rent it out for at least 5 years. Like, you know the story now, right? And either you're going to keep going with this headache, or I could take this headache off your back, pretty much. So the two main filters I would say at minimum is on market, no, and then individual, and then non-owner occupied. So those are the three I would say at minimum. Years of ownership, I'll leave that up to you. And then I don't know what, Dustin, your exit strategy is going to be, assuming you're going to do subject to or just buy it outright and then rent it out. That will probably dictate, the equity amount. So maybe you want high, maybe you want low. Let's say you don't care as long as it has 10% or more. So put your 10% minimum, and then finally the property details, and then the motivation. So are you looking for residential? Is it single family? Maybe you want not just single family. Maybe you want single family and the duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. So feel free to stack if you'd like. So just to recap, off market, individual type of owner, non-owner occupied, so you don't have to worry about emotional attachments and having to relocate somebody. Years of ownership, equity based on your exit strategy, property type, and then number seven would be, is there an additional motivation besides all of that that you would also like to go after? And that could be a failed listing, a pre-foreclosure, delinquency, or as we talked about a few moments ago, just creating your own motivation at that point. The one bathroom, high interest rates. Maybe they live out of state, perhaps. There's so many avenues that one can take. So in this case, let's do out of state. There's my 97 residential single family properties owned by an individual who lives in a different state. So that leads me to believe they're renting out this property and doing everything remotely. So when the pipe breaks, they have to call a plumber, they have to deal with all that. And if they're in a different time zone, you get the story, right? So what's the probability that an out-of-state owner is more willing to sell their single family property than a local, renter? So
Man, this is
it's a matter
yeah.
of just creating that story. And this is the thing I want individuals to that are listening to know, that you really have that ability to cook with this data, and you can make it really hot or you can make that lead really cold. It's really up
Well,
to you.
I totally like the idea instead of just saying, let's just create a random list of everybody who has a specific, let's say their foreclosure, short sale,
Right.
whatever. You're trying to figure out putting yourself in that person's shoes of needing to sell because they have this reason or that reason, which is great. Like you put your mind in the sellers, which is great. Now that gets me to another idea of like we want to find properties that could potentially be seller finance. Is there a way to use Propstream for seller financed properties?
In that scenario, I mean, just like the subject too, when it comes to seller financing, it really boils down on if the owner is accepting that strategy or not. So, I mean, we could find properties with low equity, properties with medium equity, properties with high equity, properties with one mortgages, two mortgages, five mortgages. But the challenge is the owner up for it or
What have you
not?
seen
Um,
criteria wise that could potentially either subject to or seller financing?
When it comes to seller financing, the most common category that I see most individuals that do like subject twos, lease options, creative seller financing, the two biggest categories are always on market, but not just on market, the ones that have been on market for several months, because these homeowners are now not in a good mood, right? Their agents have promised them certain things, but 2, 3, 4 months have gone by and nobody's buying that property at that supposed listed price the agent suggested. And so now they might be a little bit more open to alternative strategies. And what's the common thing that most people will say? We can get you what you want, if not more, if you're willing to work with us. And that's music to those types of users or homeowners' ears. So one of the first categories I would go after if you're trying to go creative seller financing. Now, again, I'm going to emphasize these are listed already, so tread carefully here, but on market properties that have been on market for several days on market. So I don't know what your county averages, but for example, here in my market, Orange County, they usually list properties for about 6 months. After that, you're kind of up in the air. So how about I find properties that are at the 5 month mark and start knocking on doors or leaving that breadcrumb, the postcard that says, "Have you heard of creative seller financing?" on their front door, right? So on market is a very, very popular category for creative seller financing. And then also the failed listing, right? Why? Because they've attempted to sell. Now the property didn't sell. Homeowners in this scenario think, all that's it. There's no other avenue for us. We're stuck with this property. We can't move and get closer to my sick mother or father, but that's not true. And you're here to prove that, right? So I would say start with those two categories. Just remember on market, it is listed. So tread carefully. Don't try to go behind the agent's back or anything like that. And then failed listings, those were on market, no longer on market. So all fair, all fair on that one. So go after the homeowner. And then again, other avenues I've seen people do is just getting creative. Like for example, Dustin, one thing I've seen people do when it comes to creative seller financing has nothing to do with the list. Sometimes it's just the situation at hand. And so, for example, show me all the off-market properties, but this is the situation I want. I want an individual who's owned a property for at least 3 to maybe 7 years now, right? 3 to 7 years, this small time frame of ownership. But in that 3 to 7 years, no equity has been gained. So the equity on your property is still 0 to 5% perhaps, right? So imagine that, making 3 to 7 years of payments just to not have any equity over the course of that period. And not only that, but maybe you do have a mortgage or you don't. But hey, 15 ownerships. 15 homeowners that have faced that situation where I've been making several months of payments only to see 5% in equity gained over the last few years. And so again, that's the cool thing about data is that it's not so black and white anymore. In the past it was. In the past it was, hey, you only had what the county had to offer. That's it, right? Today you have all this data at your fingertips. I just think people don't realize it. They don't realize the ability to create situations and go after these homeowners that are not on a list. These guys are making their payments. They're not missing their tax payments. They don't have liens. They don't have problems with their neighbors. Their marriage isn't at stake. They're not deceased. The situation is that they just have no equity over 5, 7 years of payments. That might be a reason to sell. So remember that a lead is not always going to be on a list. A lead is a situation. And can you create that? And therefore, if you can, that's what you're going to be talking to them about. So reverse engineer our filters is ultimately the point.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the idea, like the situation that a seller could be in that you can help them. And so
Yeah.
that's, I mean, in the end, if you're not trying to help the seller, it's not going to work out well. So always try to help the seller, which is great. I think the last one that came to mind was like tax liens, not foreclosure, but like anything with taxes, tax deeds, tax liens. Is that, I think I saw a quick button there.
Yeah,
Is
we
that,
have liens here. So we have tax delinquencies, which is they didn't pay their payments on time, so now they're on the tax roll. And then depending on the market or the county, that they could be on that tax roll for a year to 3 years. If they continue that behavior of not making their tax payments, then the term I use is they go from delinquency and they get upgraded to tax liens. Now there's an official lien against the property. And so the lien section here, and you can actually specify we have a lien category. This houses tax liens, HOA liens, mechanic liens, any of the above. But if you're just looking for tax liens, make sure you highlight that and then you go from there. So it goes from delinquency, 1 to 3 years, depending on your county. If you still haven't paid it, then a lien is placed on your property. And then if you still haven't paid that, again, another 1 to 3 years, I don't know the county, but pre-foreclosure follows suit after your tax lien.
ooh, somebody has a $90,000 tax lien against their property. Wow. How do you let your property
Yeah.
taxes get that high?
Could be a business loan, could
Oh,
be that, you just didn't pay your taxes because you wanted more in your salary this or more on your paycheck this. It's very common. You'll see people do that sometimes, especially now that like a lot of companies have their like pay stubs electronic now, and people can make like their withholding adjustments so easily today. I'm seeing people do that frequently. It's like a behavior where like, oh, hey, you know what? We're gonna go on vacation this summer, so let's reduce my holdings for like March till May, right? That way I can have $400 or $500 more each month. And then sometimes they forget to reset their withholdings because they get used to that, that behavior of, oh, hey, I got $400 out of nowhere every month. No, you didn't. You're just not paying up to Sam anymore. And so I see this a lot. It's either business taxes, uh, W-2s, right? Those are very common, stuff like that. And then you have your county city tax liens, which are your property taxes not being paid as well. So,
man, this is fantastic. I think the last question is, do you have any, I guess, tricks or things that you wish people would know about PropStream that's really going to help them, either a way to find a good situation, you're going to find a bunch of sellers or something like that. But anything else in PropStream that we should know about?
no, I think it's just a matter of exercising your curiosity muscle. One of the things that people ask us is, what's the difference between PropStream and all the other companies out there? The truth is, we're all buying the same data at the end of the day, right? But it's really who cooks with the data better than the next person. And so picture this. We're all going to the same grocery store because there's only one in the city. We all buy the same 10 ingredients, but who's the better chef at home? And that's really what I need you guys to understand. You can just go after the same few categories everyone else is going after. And if you are, my advice to you is just get creative with your marketing because you're going to be competing with a lot of other investors and professionals in that category. So you have to stand out. Or you create the situation that those guys don't even know about yet because they're still stuck in that traditional mindset of going after a list when you can explore those situations. And so that's really it. You got to cook differently with these filters. Don't just
Oh,
like Zoom, just that was too valuable information. Zoom was like, nope, cut them. Cut the mic. Sorry about that, but you guys get my point. Build those situations and you guys should be good. So just get creative. There's tons of problems out there that you guys can find.
love it. And then you guys, I think really, I want to know the sending mails, getting skip tracing. Can you walk us through that? Because that is very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So within PropStream, it all starts with, again, first building your list. So make sure you guys save those properties that you're targeting. And then once you have your 62 properties, whatever it may be, make sure again you save it. So that looks like this. Check them off, add them to a list. And then if you do it correctly, we're going to store it here in your My Property. So here's how it works. If you're just here for addresses, that's all you need. Great. Once you have it in My Properties, go ahead and click on your one bathroom list that you created in Columbus, Ohio, check them off, and then hit the export button, call it a day. But if you need a phone number or email, we have skip tracing for you. So for 12, well, actually, depending on your package, because we have different packages, but some packages, the skip tracing is free. So have fun with that. I think if you're on the essential plan, it's 12 cents an address. There's no minimum or maximum. But the skip tracing, what that does is it generates a phone number and email for you. So rather than sending a postcard, knocking on a door, you can have phone numbers, emails as you see here. So what we'll do is we'll even show you who's on the do not call list in case you're an agent and you're trying to tread lightly. And then finally, Dustin, we have our campaign section. This area houses the ability to market to a list that you've created in your My Properties. So as we talked about earlier, I can create an adjustable rate list and then create an adjustable rate campaign. And each campaign is given one website. So you get this landing page. The idea is to speak to their situation, right? This is the whole thing about building situations. You can have a ton different lists that have different categories assigned to it. But the website is designed so that you can speak to their situation with empathy. There's also an application that can be filled out by that lead. So think of this as a funnel, right? When I send my postcards or I call someone and they're like, "Do you have a website? I'd like to learn more about you." I certainly do, right? So step one of the campaign is to create the landing page. And then after that, you can send out postcards and emails to those homeowners with your landing page assigned to it. And now you have your marketing machine in play. So build your list, gather contact information if you want, and then set up a website, send postcards and emails. And then when those homeowners call back in a week or two, hey, I just got your postcard. Guess what's cool about PropStream? We're a property details platform. So if 612 Castle Road were to call me back in 2 weeks, I can say, Mr. Homeowner, thank you for calling me back. I'm here to help you. What is your address? They give me their address. I type that address in. And now my focus is not about building lists. It's about PropStream. Give me everything you know about these two homeowners. Tell me about their lien. Tell me about the agent that sold their property back in 2022. I want to run comps because 2022 prices are 2025 prices. And if I do get this property, what can I do with it? Oh, I could probably fix and flip it, right? So that's how the system works, lead generation, but don't forget the property details. They're going to be there for you to determine, what your offer should be, whether it's a good asset or something you should walk away from.
Man, Burton, this PropStream has so many great tools, and I love that it even helps you in the reaching out to these homeowners too, or
Yeah.
just people who own homes. And so property owners are fantastic to be able to send letters to, skip trace, but then also being able, I think you hit the nail on the head when you got to figure out the situation that the seller has and try to
Yeah.
go after them, because if you understand the seller, that's going to help you in the long run to be able to provide
Mm.
for them. So Burton, thank you so much for being on. I really
Thank you,
appreciate all the
Dustin.
great insights.
I appreciate you having. Have a wonderful day, guys.